Well, good evening. Welcome to another great ending to another great week here on PJNET Live. And every Friday night we do this. Whoops, sorry about that. And it's just a great night to relax at the end of a week, and a good night to find out what the heck's going on out there. Okay, and every week we have Roger from the great state of Louisiana, specifically New Orleans, Louisiana. And I ran into somebody earlier this week who watched one of the episodes, I presume it was last week, and he thought Roger was quite a character. And he actually said that he was kind of a smart kind of guy. I thought, well, actually, you're right. And so what I'm going to do, as we do every Friday night, is I'm going to kind of slide out here out of the way. And all the way from Louisiana through the magic of digital electronics and Wi-Fi, we have Roger, who, now Roger, we hadn't talked since last week.
No, we haven't talked. We've both been busy with some different things. And, well, let me tell you what I want to talk about tonight, because we're going to be tying a couple of things together today. And we are going to be talking very specific current events today, but we're also going to be talking advanced civics and Constitution and liberty. Because there's a very, very interesting thing that's going on, but it's not just going to go on today. It's going to go on for the next couple of years. It's going to go on basically for the rest of the first term of Donald Trump. And today, of course, Donald Trump declared a state of emergency and said that he is directing certain funds to be spent towards the building of the wall, making a side run around Congress. Did you see any of the coverage of this today?
No, I have been covered up in work and such as that, and I'm counting on you, yes, you, to bring me up to speed on what the heck's going on out there.
Okay, this is complex. There are no simple answers to this, and I'm gonna kind of cover it in detail as far as whether or not he can do this, whether or not he actually will follow through and do this, and what the ramifications are constitutionally. Most of us remember from our basic, civics, three branches of government, and Congress having the power of the purse. And that's certainly true. And in fact, Mark, I'm a huge believer in the three branches of government. In fact, most conservatives and probably most Americans, if you asked them what makes America free, what makes us so great, they'd probably say the Constitution. And then you'd say, okay, well, lots of countries have constitutions. What makes our Constitution so special? And a lot of them might say the Bill of Rights, but a lot of constitutions have even a better Bill of Rights than ours does. Okay, some of them are absolutely fantastic, but they're not followed. What really makes our system of government special is the separation of powers, and the fact that you've got the executive, the judiciary, the legislative, and then certain duties are spelled out to each of them. And of course, over the years, sometimes you'll have power grabs between the different branches of government, and it can become quite interesting. And essentially, that's what you've got right now. Is you have a power grab going on between different branches of government. But you see, it's not that simple. So first of all, I could understand if some conservatives or some libertarians were opposed to Trump's move just on the idea of, well, a president doesn't really have the right to do that, they could say. They could even be frightened if they said, well, even if you're saying that when he declares an emergency, he has extraordinary powers, what if a future Democratic president decided that the environmental situation was an emergency and stepped around Congress to enact a Green New Deal and started spending, billions of dollars doing this and that and the other that the people didn't want? So I can understand their point of view. But it's not that simple. And it's not that simple for a couple of reasons. One, Congress actually passed in, I think it was 76, it might have been 77, an Emergency Powers Act, and giving Trump the right legally to do exactly what he's doing right now.
Giving the president.
Giving the president the right to basically, in times of national emergency, to declare an emergency. And presidents have done it. a whole bunch of times. Okay,
Yep.
something like 50, 60 times presidents have done it. But there's a couple more wrinkles. So far, no president, and this is where one area it hasn't been tested in the courts. So far, no president, because the idea behind an emergency, in part, isn't just that it's an emergency and something needs to be done, but that you don't have time to get things done through the normal legislative process because something's an emergency. Well, Congress has been trying, grappling with this for the last couple of years and has failed to do anything. So they've essentially rejected this idea. So here you kind of have Trump declaring an emergency and saying, I want to use this to do something that Congress has specifically already rejected doing, because Congress has refused to spend the money on this. No court case has ever made a decision, but because there's never been anything like that. Now, interestingly enough, there has been one court case on this. When Congress first passed the act, they gave themselves the right to overthrow the president, not overthrow him like out of power, but to overturn his declaration by a simple majority vote of both houses of Congress that the president could not veto. Okay, so they wouldn't need a 2/3 majority. They would only need a 50+1 in the House and the Senate. Well, in the 80s, the Supreme Court said you can't do that. They said you can't take away the president's right of veto by legislation. So Congress could overturn Trump, but it would take a 2/3 majority in both the Senate and the House to do it, which isn't going to happen.
But
Go ahead.
It can't be. It could. It just can't be done frivolously. I mean, they already passed something. The president effectively negated it using executive power, and they negate his negate. So, I mean, we can't play this little game of tit and tat. So, yeah, that sounds reasonable.
Right. So, now, as it appears to me, President Trump is using that law from '76, and there's another law he's using that gives the president the ability to not spend new money, but to redirect money that's that's already being spent, already on the books. And for example, the military for the next year has something like $7 billion in their construction budget.
Right.
Okay. Well, that's right where Trump's going to get the big chunk of the money.
Sure.
Okay. Is restructuring. Okay. Now, let me tell you right now.
Okay. What we anticipated this happening to some extent, okay? And what I'm going to do is the connection that Refugee is using is somewhat shaky, okay? And we've kind of lost that connection. Let me try to bring some audio in. Folks, let me try to explain what just happened. The connection that Roger is using, he has told me before we went on the air, it could kind of disappear arbitrarily, and it seems that is the case. So he hopefully will figure out that that's happened. Okay, so and now you'll see that he is not there. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll just kind of take the stage a moment, and so again, this was anticipated. And let me get everything out of view here. Okay. And we're just going to give a few minutes for Roger to find his way back. The connection he's using is somewhat shaky. And so he'll be back. In the meantime, I hope that you were here last Tuesday to hear Dale Didway. And I see that Roger has made it back. He's still kind of making some adjustments on his end, and I'll just simply wait for him to kind of stabilize a minute, and hopefully he'll remember. I'll try to help him remember where exactly he took out. And so what I'm going to do, I can hear you, Roger. We're going to bring you on deck, and as we anticipated, the connection did drop momentarily. And we were talking at the time of the drop on this end. I think that you were segueing out of the 2/3 majority and the use of the military construction budget. That's kind of where you tied your horse there, bud.
That's where I am. Okay, so here's where we are right now, and this is actually not a simple constitutional issue. And this thing could get tied up in the courts, and in fact, Trump said he expects it to get tied up in the courts, but that he's sure they'll find some liberal judge to overturn it, but that he expects to win in the Supreme Court, is what he said.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he telegraphed kind of what he's going to do there. And people are split. And I can tell you right now that by the time I'm finished, the people who think that Donald Trump is the devil and are completely anti-Trump are going to hate me. And the people that think that Donald Trump is the second coming of Christ are going to hate me as well. Okay. Because it's here's the deal. I can kind of understand both points of view, and I'm a little worried that Ann Coulter might be right. Ann Coulter is fed up with Trump. Okay, she feels abandoned by him, and her point of view is he took 2 years to do this. He telegraphed that he was going to do it. He knows good and well that liberal courts are going to stop him from doing it. It's going to take a long time. He never intended to build a wall, but he wanted to say, see, they stopped me from building.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And her is, Mr. President, you have the authority to do it. And not only should you have acted sooner, but you should literally ignore the courts. You should tell the courts, no, I am the commander-in-chief, and Congress has passed these laws, and I absolutely have the power to do it. And in fact, I'm ordering the military to do it. Go take a jump in the lake. Mm-hmm. That's the position. That's what she would like Trump to do. Now, what would happen if she did that? And what happens under our constitutional form of government if the Supreme Court or the court step in and say, you can't do that, and a president says, well, no, you're wrong. Yes, I can. Well, the truth is, some people have this idea that the courts control everything. But no, there are three co-equal branches of government. So at that point, what it would mean is it's really up to Congress to decide, has Trump acted unconstitutionally, or is he acting constitutionally? And if they think he's acted unconstitutionally, they may impeach him. Mm-hmm. And then they may out him from office. If they can't get the votes to do that, but the majority of the American people think that he's acted unconstitutionally, he may be kicked out of office in the next election. And that's exactly the way our founders intended for things like this to get solved. Okay, impeachment's a political process. And that's something that can happen. And elections are a political process that happen every 4 years. So these kind of disputes can get settled, without us having to have armed insurrection. So it's not the end of the world if a president ignores the court. Okay. And to tell you the truth, I tend to agree with Ann that is kind of the route Trump should have gone. And that this thing probably is going to end up getting delayed in the court so much because they're going to cherry pick which courts they file lawsuits in, and they're going to file lawsuits over different issues. Okay, and you're going to have one liberal judge making a decision over here and another judge over here, and going this route is probably going to slow this thing down enough that we're not going to get a final decision on this until the end of the Trump administration. Okay. So then people are going to have to decide for themselves, Trump supporters, when they go to the ballot box, mm-hmm. Did Trump do everything that he said he was going to do? And the establishment just refused to let him win, or do we trust him? Now, here's my point. I think a lot of people voted for Donald Trump because they thought he was a master negotiator. And I think a lot of people voted for Donald Trump because they thought he was a strong man. Okay. Well, I don't care whether you're a master negotiator or you're a strong man or both. If you are one or the other or both, and you have that kind of capability, and you go into office with there being a major promise that your base agreed with and your base wants done, Mark, I think you get it done. Okay, I think you get it done whether it's through flexing your muscles or whether it's through negotiation, and that if you fail to get it done, you have failed. So I'm not going to take real kindly to Trump saying, oh, they wouldn't let me do it. Everybody always knew the establishment would oppose him on this. Okay. Mm-hmm. I don't know, and I'm not prepared to make the political prediction of where his base is going to come down on this. Are they just going to say Trump did the best he could. He kept his word, but he was blocked. or are they going to go kind of like Ann Coulter has peeled off and said, well, he bamboozled us, you know, and he never really intended to get it done. I don't know about his intentions. I kind of wish he would go the route that Coulter wants him to go. And I'm going to tell you why, even though I'm very much of a constitutionalist, and even though I admit that this would be kind of a crisis, Mark, we're in unusual times. The fact of the matter is, you know, that I went into American refugee mode, basically, when the Supreme Court upheld the Obamacare decision. And I feel that we're a few years removed now from really being a constitutional republic, and we've been looking at a lot of our rights erode. And I feel like with the things that the Democrats are threatening to do, that if the Democrats, A, take full power of government in 2 years, or B, continue to flood the country with, you know, people that are immediately going to go on social services, and that then they're going to try to grant the right to vote to, or allow to vote through voter fraud. I kind of feel like we're kind of done as a republic. So I feel like securing the border is extremely important, that it is an emergency. And I'd like to see Trump go there. Now, to let everybody know, and Mark, you know this, but not everybody knows this, I agonized like you did in the last election on who to vote for. In the end, I did not vote for Trump because I did not trust him. And just based on his history, I couldn't do it. I certainly didn't vote for Hillary, but I voted third party, and I followed my conscience. Because Trump has kept his word on Supreme Court justices, and because Trump has, quite frankly, although he hasn't been perfect, has been the most pro-life president we've ever had in what he's actually done, I've been pretty inclined to vote to reelect Trump. Okay. I have. But I can tell you that this is, you know, how he handles this and how this whole thing plays out is one of the things that could end up, you know, affecting my decision on this. But people ought to listen to each other carefully on the debate on this and not just jump down each other's throats. We're too divided as patriots. We're too divided as conservatives. And there's legitimate arguments on both sides. I can certainly understand if somebody from a purely constitutional libertarian perspective says, look, no, we can't allow the president to do an end run around Congress and spend money that Congress won't approve. And I can certainly understand the fearful argument of, look, if Trump gets away with this, what is the next Democratic president going to declare an emergency about? Gun violence? And then start spending money, you know, to have people come pick up the guns and try and ignore, you know, a court decision or so on and so forth. So I'm sensitive to those arguments. Right. But I feel like we're in enough of a crisis constitutionally, and we're in enough of a crisis at this point in our country that it's time for this kind of a hardcore fight. It's time for this kind of battle.
All right, well, let's take a couple steps backwards. Earlier, you talked about impeachment, and that word gets tossed around a bit. Okay, impeachment. Impeachment, in and by itself, has no effect on the president.
That means indictment, basically.
Yeah, that's
and it's the job of the House to impeach, and the House can impeach. But then the Senate has a trial and has to convict, and it takes a 2/3 majority in the Senate to convict.
Well, it's a two-step process. There's impeachment, and then there's removal from office. So you can impeach the president over and over and over and over.
Oh,
for any, you don't even need a reason. You just need the votes. Okay.
Well, if Trump goes down the route that I think he should go, of basically ignoring liberal courts and saying, your decision is unconstitutional, I have the right to do this in this emergency, and I'm going to do it, I have no doubt that the democratically controlled House of Representatives will impeach him.
Well, again, they don't even need a reason. They just need the votes.
Yeah, they don't even need a reason. I do not believe for 1 second that 2/3 in the Senate would vote to remove him from office. Now, let me say this. There might be as many as 4 or 5 Republicans who might. Remember, there are long-term establishment members of the Republican Party that they feel closer to fellow members of the establishment. They feel closer to Democrats that are fellow members of the establishment than they do to Trump, or than they do to hardcore pro-life conservatives. Okay. But I don't see you getting the type of majority. I think what you would have is a situation where you would have an incredibly energized Trump base. I think you would have an incredibly energized base on the other side. And I think we'd have one hell of a barn burner of a presidential election in 2020 that would end up deciding, how things are going to go in this country. But at that point, too, what I'm going to say is this. Right now, this is the only issue, because Trump's kept a lot of promises. This is really the only issue.
Well, this would be his signature achievement, just as Obamacare would have been Obama's. Now, by the way, these end runs the president make around Congress is not something that Trump invented. This has been going on for some time now.
Yes.
This is not some new idea that Trump brought to the political landscape. Now, let me ask you something. Let's suppose for a moment that Trump decides, okay, we're going to build the wall. Well, there's still some problems. There's still some hurdles that are, for example, let's say that I own a piece of property that the southern border of which is also the southern border of the United States, and all of a sudden the Army Corps of Engineers come in here and start, plowing up the dirt and moving, I would be saying,
eminent domain law.
Excuse me, that's my property. You see where I'm going with this? There's a lot of property owners along there that eminent domain is still in effect, so the government would have to. You don't have to actually buy the property. You could actually just obtain a right-of-way. But the fact is, you have to compensate the owner of the property. Well, that's going to come at some price tag and some court battle.
Some price tag.
And if I'm a principled liberal, I'm going to resist, and I'm going to use every appeal and do everything I can. Eminent domain, at the end of the day, you can't stop it. You can negotiate. You can gum up the cogs.
To get on here, Mark, and this is why I say that unless Trump just does an end grab, even the courts, this is why the wall won't happen, because it's not just going to be eminent domain. First of all, there's going to be some people who maybe even support the idea of a wall that don't like that their property is getting seized up. But one of the first things that's going to happen is the liberals are going to go out and try to look for anybody who owns any border property whatsoever, who might be liberal, might be on their side of the fence, and try and fight the whole eminent domain issue in court.
Of
and
course,
you will have environmentalists that are going to find some sort of a rat, that regularly crosses the border between the United States and Mexico,
or some beetle, some earthworm.
That animal's going to go extinct if we do. So they're going to file on environmental grounds. Meanwhile, they're going to file. It's going to be multiple lawsuits filed in multiple jurisdictions for multiple reasons. So there will be liberal judges who will issue stays. I have no doubt about it.
Okay, well, let's do this. Let's build the wall where we can. We're conservative landowners, and let all the immigrants funnel themselves in through the property of the liberals and see how they like it.
And see how they like it.
Yeah, they'll set up their camp, and I'm sure the immigrants who cross illegally will use the porta potties that the liberals provide for them. I'm sure that they'll pick up their trash and so on. And let's see how that goes.
And we'll see how it goes. Now, the truth of the matter, too, and people have to remember this, because people look at, well, Trump was just looking for like $5.5 billion that he didn't get or something. The total amount of what Trump wants to do is about $25 billion. What he was looking for in this last deal that they only gave him a pittance of, they gave him like $1.5 billion for a new barrier or something. And just for political games reasons, they won't use the word wall. They have to use the word barrier and fencing and things like that. But they gave him $1.5 billion. But again, that was only for a year. That's like to do what he was asking for was enough to do 25% of the job, and what they basically offered him is about 20% of what he's asked for. Okay. So, and they're not going to give him anything else again the whole time he's in office. So you're talking about a tiny percentage. And even if he was to step forward and do this with the military, he's not talking about doing the whole $25 billion worth. But here's the truth. One of the most intelligent things I heard said, and there was somebody who originated the statement, I don't know who they were, and a lot of other people picked up on it, but during the campaign, is that the difference between Trump supporters and people who didn't support Trump is that people who did not support Trump took him literally but not seriously, but his supporters took him seriously but not literally. So when and it was absolutely true. So when he said things like Mexico's going to pay for the wall, there wasn't one Trump supporter who ever thought that Mexico was going to write a check. But they understood that Trump meant that basically, no, through the policies that I'm going to put in place that are going to harm Mexico financially and help the United States financially, basically Mexico is going to pay for the wall. Liberals try and say, he said that Mexico was going to pay for the wall. Congress isn't supposed to have to be paying for any of this. None of those types of little semantics arguments are going to work. And I don't think any of us ever imagined a brilliant 30-foot tall concrete barrier the entire length of the border. What we did imagine was basically a secure border. Okay, with enough wall, enough fencing, enough barrier, enough smart technology that you actually stop the problem, because we haven't stopped the problem. There's a huge problem, and Democrats like the problem. You know, Reagan made a deal in the 1980s, which, he thought that it was worth it, and when he gave up amnesty for the illegals who were already here, in exchange for border security. But then the border security never happened. Okay, so conservatives.
But the amnesty sure did.
The amnesty sure did, but the border security never did. And so conservatives have learned their lesson, and ever since then, nothing's ever passed, because conservatives have been like, now we got to secure the border before we can talk about amnesty. We got to secure the border before we can talk about dreamers, because the border never seems to get secured. And you see, this is the Democrats' game. Flood the country with third world people, put them on government assistance, then give them amnesty, okay, and eventually they'll be legal voters, and even before they're legal voters, they'll be
their children will be, or something. It's their
children will be what?
Let me
play the long game. They play the long game.
They're playing the long game
because of what happened in the 1980s. California is now lost to us. It's lost, Mark. It's so lost that it's almost inconceivable for us to imagine us getting it back. And it was an unlosable state for us at that time. People forget Reagan was the governor of California. Pete Wilson, after Reagan, was a two-term Republican governor of California. Reagan won California twice, and George H.W. Bush won California once. Not only have we lost California every election since then, but no Republican can come within 20 points in California. Right. And California no longer has a single Republican elected to statewide office.
Right. And that's 55 electoral votes. I remember when California was struggling, they were tinkering with the idea of California seceding from the Union, but the Democratic Party would not possibly stand for that and lose 55 electoral votes. They would not allow that. Let me bring in a different angle. I'm on a mailing list of a legal immigrant. They're basically against illegal immigration and for legal anyway. I have been getting several emails a day from them. We've had their president appear on this show about a year or two ago, and they're pretty hardcore, anti-immigration or anti-illegal immigration. Here's some of and I haven't read their emails, okay, but I certainly read, scan it enough. Here's some of the things that was brought up. Early on, they objected to the idea, the notion that Trump is promising to sign a bill that he hasn't even read. Sound familiar?
Right.
They were also complaining that this bill was so voluminous, and this is one of the things that scares me. When a bill is thousands of pages, that's a Trojan horse. I know it's a Trojan horse. There's something in there that's being obfuscated in the voluminous nature of the bill. There's little things hidden and laced inside. And then, of course, they started wailing and screaming that Trump did sign it and that he broke all of it, blah, blah, blah. But give me your thought, give me your take on those points that were brought up. This bill was so voluminous, it could not possibly have been read by the people that voted it in Congress, and it really is not conceived. It's not practical to think.
You're talking about the new spending bill, and yes, it's an absurdity, and yes, I'm upset by it. The call Trump made on it, I think, is he said, well, I'm going to sign it, but I'm going to declare an emergency and build the wall.
Okay.
And the simple fact of the matter is that when we did the government shutdown last time, the Democrats refused to budge, and Trump started taking a hit in the polls. He did. He started taking a hit. And it seems like Republicans always do during government shutdowns and during these arguments. And we always end up losing our will to fight. So I wish Trump wouldn't have signed it, but at the same time, I'm kind of realistic in that, well, if Trump hadn't signed the bill, we'd be into another government shutdown now, which isn't really a government shutdown. It's a shutdown of about 25% of the government, but we don't really save any money because whenever we reopen the government, we go in and we do it before. But it can upset things economically and everything else. And look, elections have consequences, and the Republicans did not keep enough of their promises, and they lost the House. They lost the House. And the Democrats are in control of the House now, and they are totally, completely dug in, and that's how it is.
Well, so, and I'm not surprised when I found out, they come up with this really innovative idea. We're going to form a bipartisan committee and we're going to work this out. I knew as soon as I heard that I wanted to vomit. First of all, no, you're not.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Exactly. You're not going to get both sides to agree on much of anything. And this is just another kick the can down the road a little, but this time it's 3 weeks. And surprise, surprise, no, they didn't agree on anything. And here we are. I mean, somebody has got to, and it sounds like Trump is going, if some of the dialogue that you're referring to, but it's going to make a bloody mess based on what you said. And I've always thought you had a pretty darn good crystal ball when it comes to looking into the future political landscape, because this will have the courts, the dockets will be flooded and tied up, and will be this is going to be like one of those backlashes when you're fishing,
Here's what I'd encourage Trump supporters to do, and here's what I'd encourage people who flat out want the wall to do. Call the White House, because Trump said we're eventually going to win in the courts. That's going to take too long. Okay? Right now, Trump needs to be hearing from his base saying, start building. Start giving us updates every week on what's happened, on how much progress has happened.
Well, or you could do a pilot program, find an area, a certain, just a few, maybe 100-mile span, let's say, 50-mile span, whatever, but and take a baseline of here's what's happening inside our border prior to building the wall. Build a wall to where the immigrants have to go around it, and then measure.
That's happened. That's happened in San Diego and in El Paso, and San Diego and El Paso don't have anywhere near the problems that they used to have. Okay, yeah. And the truth of the matter is that it works where you build it. It works where you build it.
Well, that presumes that logic and facts can be used to persuade the other side, and I don't know if either side can be persuaded at this point.
Right. Right. Neither side can be persuaded at this point. Trump's the president, and we're going to see. Now we're going to see how tough he is, and how far he goes on this. Look, I don't know if Donald Trump is a Christian or not. There's a lot of things he's done that would make me say no. He says he is, and only he and Jesus know. And in fact, maybe only Jesus knows. Maybe he doesn't even know. But I pray for the man. The man's kept a lot of promises, and he's been there for us on the pro-life issue. Really, again, not perfect. There's a couple of areas of complaint that I have, but more so than any president yet has been there for us.
Well, I'll give him this, and I'll echo what you said earlier. I did not vote for Trump because I trust a fart when I have the flu more than I trusted him as a candidate. Okay?
Right.
However, upon getting in office, everything that the president has unilateral authority to do, Roger, he's done it. He moved the embassy of Israel to Jerusalem because you know what? He can. Okay? He made the appointments because who makes the appointments? The president. Now, yes, you know, the Congress has to, right.
He kept his promise. Yeah.
On those things that he can do by himself, he did. He has done. But this one, this is going to be a mess, and I don't think either side, at the end of the day, is going to be happy with the outcome. And both sides will be saying, "See, I told you so."
Correct. Both sides will be saying, "See, I told you so."
This is where some of the things that we were taught in civics in the 9th grade just kind of run aground. I don't see any common ground. I don't see any compromise. I don't see any answer. And if Trump digs in, which I tend to believe he will, our courts are, the American people will not know what to do because one court's going to say this, another court's going to say that. And there's going to be jurisdictional issues. There's going to be eminent domain issues. There's going to be environmental issues. There's going to be economic issues.
They're not going to make it one issue. Suit after suit after suit.
Absolutely.
The goal is going to be to tie this thing up in the courts longer than Donald Trump will be president.
Right. And impeachment. I mean, this is just going to turn into it's almost like pro wrestling at this point. I wish I could give the thing a better score.
Yeah. Well, pray for the country, folks, and follow it and advocate for your position. Because Trump does hear his base when his base grumbles, and he hears it, and he moves, and and I guarantee you this: the establishment wing is telling him, "Oh, just don't do anything else. Oh, this is actually perfect. Now it's just tied up in the courts. You don't have to do anything." I guarantee you the establishment wing of the party is just saying, let's just let this be tied up in the courts. And you can go out and make some speeches about how you want to do it and you're doing your best to do it, but how the liberals are stopping you from doing it, and so on and so forth. But
I can remember Obama after some of the the shootings. He at some point said, I'm doing all I can, but I can't do it without Congress. Call your so he kind of distanced himself from personal, but I don't think Trump can get away with that because Obama didn't run. He did a lot of things, but he didn't put himself in the position of saying, I'm going to take down the gun industry. I'm going to roll back the Second Amendment. Trump very much on the camp. He's going to build this wall, and I think he's personally vested in that. This will be his signature achievement. And he's got a lot to lose. For him, I could argue this is a hill worth dying for. I don't know of any member of Congress that I could say that same thing to.
Right.
That's a problem.
Right. Well, Mark, it's been great.
Okay.
I enjoy our Friday nights. Together, and we're going to watch this as it plays out, and we'll keep everybody abreast of it. And I'll be here next week to talk about something new next week.
Okay. Well, Roger, I always enjoy it. I really do, and you're a champ of the cause. And let me kind of clean you up and send you over there, and we'll put me back on camera. Hey, I always enjoy. Roger's always got some insights, and he's got enough time, I think. He's very busy with personal projects, but he has time to go look at stuff that I don't have time to get down in the details like he does. And I particularly enjoy or appreciate his information about some of the court decisions and some of the historical, some of the precedents that have been set early on. Now, coming up Monday night, we will have Troy Towns. Now, I happen to know that Troy has organized an event tomorrow, which is a walk, a public demonstration for biblical marriage. That'll be happening in Montgomery, Alabama tomorrow. Hope the weather's good there. I haven't checked it. So we'll be hearing about that in all likelihood Monday night right here on PJNet Live. And if you missed anything from some of our previous guests, they are available on our YouTube channel. Tuesday night, if you missed last Tuesday night, you missed a blessing. Dale Didway is a champion, and he talked about something that he went to for the Tim Tebow Foundation, where he shines shoes for some special needs children and young adults. Very, very moving video. And we hear from Dale each and every Tuesday night. So that's the lineup for now. We actually have some new guests that will be appearing in the near future. So keep it tuned right here to PJNet Live, and we'll see you next time around.